So, right, we're going to record this meeting. I think somebody else needs to be muted. Darlene, you're still not muted. I'm going to mute you still. If that's okay. Um, my name is Jake Holdaway. I'm a city council member for Vineyard City. Over the last uh, 5 months, I've been arguing for the citizens to have access to the public ledger. I want to bring you into my world of what I am facing on a city council and the daily things that I get asked for from citizens so that you guys understand why I'm asking for the policy to be upheld with what I am. Since taking office, I always get confronted from a few different things from citizens asking for, just like Darlene asks for. These are some screenshots of some things that I get asked to investigate. As a governing board member of the city council, I have unredacted access to all finances to have oversight of what the mayor does, the council does, as the city manager does. Some of the claims, like right there, the mayor being in Europe, or this is a picture of her in Ukraine, something that was sent to me. The Qualtrics concert, where they went to a private concert, was sent to me of who went and why are people paying for that. Over the last 6 months, newer things, those are things that you already knew about. I have had multiple citizens come to me about claims that the city is dining in at this place and spent $1,000 here, spent $3,000 here at this food establishment. If you go through transparent.utah.gov, you can see roughly anywhere between $80,000 to $90,000 in food spend in the last 12 months. It's hard to clean up. Sometimes the names of the purchasing is a little bit different. And if you could imagine the amount of calls that I get from citizens when they see them at, I don't know, Sundance or just different locations of where they're going to eat. Thanksgiving Point and others, and I'm having to take the phone call, verify if it is, and see if it isn't. This past October, one of us, I'm not going to reveal the name of the employee, but an employee came forward with me claiming that millions of dollars in developer payments, different payments, were not being reported to the state in the transparency website, and that I needed to be very particular this year and looking at the state, at the ledger. For those that don't know, I need to set the table of what the difference between the ledger is and the state transparency report. The ledger is the report that is just a report taken from the book of saying, this is what we want to disclose. Now, they should be disclosing everything and they should be lined up. But there's a big difference between the report. The report just gives the data and it doesn't put it into categories. So on some of these accusations from citizens, it's important that I look at the dining and food in category of how much food and from what department, and also what department, but how much of that food came in a specific time period, like a month. They allot for those things, right? And so the state transparency report would not show any of that. Also, I received calls about citizen or our cars that are in Vegas, Moab, and Disneyland, or I'll get emails and texts about it. Again, I'm over the governing body and the policy of travel and of food. And I wish David Larray was here right now, but when he joins, I will definitely make sure I verify this. In October, with the amount of vehicle questions that I got, I went to the city manager and our public works director and asked them to get a purchasing card of a breakdown of where all of our gas is being purchased, and I'd just like to know. In that meeting, they told me that the vendor did not supply point of sale transaction information so that I could not get a breakdown of who was buying, like what employee. And I want to break down this. You guys, when you have a credit card, it'll take what pump you're at, how many gallons, what time of day, are you at the Maverick, what's the address, and all of those types of things. So obviously, I made a few phone calls quickly to the state to say, is this okay? They just give one lump sum and that it's not broken down. And this was in October or November. And I'm sure David will get the following month, the story changed, and it was that that vendor doesn't do it, but now we're going to go to a new vendor. Months later, that story changed to no, they actually have that information. We'll get it. And I think I was given that information about 2 weeks ago, and I'll go through and look at this. But 6 months later, after looking into, is this person in Vegas or Disneyland and not being able to make a call, and then looking up 5 months later, I have no oversight to be able to help you guys. If you guys can make calls, you can tell me that you're angry or that you see this car, and it's really quite difficult. And I tell the city manager that's happening. Now, I also need to set the table that the state of Utah does not dictate to cities. They try not to micromanage, but what they do is they put forth policies that are required by law. But if we game those policies, citizens will not have a right to know where their money goes. And so let me walk through those. Every year, the state requires that there be a a budget that is made, and I'm going to post this in here, and I want you to look through it. The budget, the state code does not require how detailed this budget is. So when Daria joined the meeting, she's like, I'm noted, and many of you have come to me and said, hey, there's 40,000 for meetings. Right. Doesn't say food. It doesn't, I mean, what is that? Is that food? Is that food where? Is that, what is it? How much? What restaurants? Like that doesn't give. Others say travel. In fact, Zach's asked me a few questions. I don't know if Zach wants to put on mute, but like travel here, travel there. Like people ask questions about this, right? Um, so, but because our policies are, and if you watched last year's meeting, I said, if you look at this policy, it is so vague and so high, and without any details that I cannot ascertain where the money is going. And that's one of the things that the state requires. So it's so vague that I myself don't get to see it. The second thing that the state puts in policy is what's called procurement thresholds. So our city, we as a city get to make our own policy. The state doesn't mandate this. But by gaming the system and having all of the thresholds extremely high, so let me walk you through this. Oh, let me go back here. Sorry, that's not that. That's this. If any department head or authorized employee wants to spend under $5,000, they can do it, as long as it's within their budget that was approved, the previous budget. They're not going to come and say, can I go to this restaurant or that restaurant or drive here or drive there, as long as it's under, you see how large that is? It's not going to come to council. If it's between $5,000, $25,000, the department head and purchasing agent can just spend that money, $25,000. That, again, me as the legislative body over the money, they are not going to be coming back and asking me. Now, why is that important? Because that means it doesn't come to a city council meeting. They don't put it in a report, and Daria and all of our citizens can't review what are the things that they're going to buy. Also, if it's between 25 and 50,000, the mayor and the department head don't. Now it's just the mayor. So when people come to me and say, hey, Jake, why, this travel or that travel, I'm not involved. The policy completely excludes me from knowing what's going on. So first off, the first protection is the budget. It excludes me from knowing because it's so vague. Number two, the procurement policy is so high and so vague that they don't have to come back and ask me. You can see very few things that I have ever approved, like a snow plow that was like 157,000 or 170,000. But other than that, the way in which this is approved and the way our policies, and the state's not going to mandate this, okay? So just by having this policy in place, they've removed me from this process. So I just want to make sure that's clear. The third and final way that Jake Holdaway is going, as council member, is going to see how the finances of our city is done is by accessing the general ledger after the year is over. But all I'm going to know is what happened after the fact. I'm not going to know beforehand, can they go here? Can they go there? And I understand, like the council goes, well, I don't want to be micromanaging anybody for 2,000 here or $200 here or $300 here. But that's not what's happening. These thresholds are so high. And I will email anybody the procurement policy. It's only a 4 or 5 page document. I invite you to look through it because it removes the entire legislative process that I'm involved with. So I am put in place to have oversight of all of this, right? Um, in December of 2004, 24, the city, through our city manager and I hope our city attorney, sent me an email. And the previous year, we had done a really good job. Oh, let me go back here of bringing in citizens. We brought in a citizens committee, anybody that wanted to be involved and sit in my meeting with the city, with the financial person, or 10 to 15 of us that just said, hey, because the budget is so high, let's get granular as to what that is because I can't see it. After that, I was sent an email that I could no longer deputize a CPA and have someone to be able to help us. That the city manager could decline any meetings if there was a citizen present. And that was really important because, let me break this up. Deputize. That doesn't mean that they're legally being authorized by the city. It just means that, just similar to me getting a CPA to help me with my taxes, that I could have, what's her name? Kimberly Olson was the one that helped me go and do the ledger last time. She's the one that helped me find that we're in Europe, right? And France and all over. And if someone that doesn't understand the coding that the ledger is in, it's in a completely different code. I've had someone that's opened it up into an Excel spreadsheet and it's not clean. It's not like a normal thing. You really need to have a CPA understand what goes through and do that. So having a CPA that has a degree in this, that reviews this, not me, that could come in and say, hey, Jake, this is normal spend. This is where it's at. Somebody that actually audits cities, right? An independent person that could sit on and be in with meetings, that I would no longer be allowed to have that. In the back of my mind, obviously it's a red flag to me because I'm having someone within the city telling me that the state transparency report is off by millions from the ledger and that you should look into it in December, okay? Other things, that cities are no longer have any right to meet with staff. So many of you guys are going to staff about your questions about where they're buying things, and I can no longer have them in meetings with me. Everyone was really quite respectful in all the meetings that we had. And so what could I do? You can read the end of this meeting. I can vote once a year on the annual budget. That's what I'm being told, right? I get that one vote a year. And I can control the ordinance or policy, which is the procurement policy. As long as those thresholds are high, I'm not going to make any votes of where they go out to dinner and they can spend $80,000 to $90,000 in food, right? So even though we had an election 2 years ago, we're like, hey, there's a lot of wasteful spending going out. I wasn't going to be involved. In February on the 22nd, the city sent me over in a PDF 2 years of the ledger and made it known, here's the email, about how I would not be able to have a CPA look it over, and I honored those requests, and that they put it into a PDF, and it's uncategorized so that I can't see, does the total dollar amount add up to millions being off, right? Because the problem that I'm investigating at that time is our millions of dollars not being reported to Utah City. Now, I ran on not giving on that Utah City shouldn't be receiving government money. So to find out that $2 or $3 million isn't being reported and that they are getting money and where they're getting money was something that I wanted to look into, and I needed a CPA. But based off of the formatting that they sent it to me in, I could not open it, and I made that known that this isn't the ability. And that's when I started to reach out to the state auditor. Now, let me set the table. The previous year, because we've already had this argument, we fought from December until April, May to get the ledger last year. At that time, it wasn't Seth because we had an election. His name was Tyler Plasto. Tyler Plasto made it very clear in the auditor's office that everyone, that I get the ledger. That's why I had the ledger last year. That's why we found him in Europe. That Kimberly Olson, a CPA, got the ledger last year. There's no difference than that. And we shared it with citizens. There's no problem with that. We had an election. Our state auditor was changed. It's now Tina Cannon. And so out of the blue on March 12th, when I go to ask for it, our city manager said on the 12th says, Jake, we're not going to get it. And he's going to go through and you can read through these. I'll make this PowerPoint public. That due to privacy concerns, and he brings up the minors and citizens' names and email addresses are in there. Now, I've already had this argument. When you're stealing money from a city, one of the things that most people do is put that money into children's names. I hate to say it, but people look for their names. So because of that, in state code, anybody that receives money from the city or pays money to the city so that you've paid off an elected official, it is of public record. We established that last year, and that's why that precedence was there. Our city manager, with no vote in policy, it never went to the mayor to change this policy. It never went to the council to change. We've never had a standing policy that I would need to have a CPA sign a non-disclosure of a document that is of public record. And the state auditor had confirmed that. The following day, I was told that I could retrieve the general ledger information from the state transparency website. Now, I knew in the back of my head that the state transparency website was off by millions. And so I was like, okay, do I press forward? Do I not press forward? I called the person, the whistleblower, the employee that called me and said, Jake, I've been counting more. I think it's more in the realm of 1.5 to 1.8 million. And so I continue to press on to try to find out, is it or is it not? And David Luray, he's in these meetings as well. I want to make very clear the difference and distinction between what is the ledger and the state transparency website. And many times the city will start to blur the lines and try to make me believe that the state transparency report is the ledger. And in fact, it's not. And so calling the state and finding out that they're two separate, I don't know, David, if you want to hit on that. You're muted, David.
How about now? You got that? Can you hear me
Say
okay?
that again.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm sorry, I haven't heard what you said previously, but I just got here from another meeting. But the difference here is that they've been trying to sell the transparency website version of the ledger as being the authoritative ledger to use. But the fact is, they redact things. So they have names of people in there which they have to by law, blot out. But they don't just blot out the names, blot out the whole line. So when you go to add things up, they don't work, doesn't match. The total you get from one isn't the total you get from the other. Now, mind you, when you go back and reconcile them, they probably are okay. But the thing is, we don't know that. And so unless you actually have the really raw, legitimate, original ledger, you can't look into what these things are and where the money is going, where it's come from.
I also, David, you weren't here when I went over the October-November gas bill where they told us that our vendor did not keep point of sale information and that it was impossible.
They were saying that everyone had a card. The Vineyard people that had a card that they would charge their gas on and so forth, but they didn't have individualized records. It was all one big record for the city, which they couldn't tell us how much was purchased when and where. And it seems to be silly because if you don't know where everything came from, how would you know the total's right? They had to have a way to go through and verify all that, but they
Also,
claim they didn't.
yeah, they just told us that they got one lump sum at the end of the month and then paid it. And then the following month, I went over where the story changed, where they said we're going to go to a new vendor the following month that could provide that, but we're going to have to change. And then when we got heat on them just recently, the story changed and it was now turned over to us, and we'll finally look into it 6 months later. But
Yeah,
those are some of the things that like I don't have the time to babysit in a way like of staff. But going back to the false different stuff, and Nichelle, I'll actually walk through the public record because it's going to get pretty spicy in here as terms of like what is privacy because it's been a con, and I'm going to go through that policy. On March 22nd, at the exact same day that the mayor was there, sorry, that Eric was claiming that there is this big grandma problem and that it's 1,300 or 1,100 pages of general ledger. And so because of that, it's going to take hours and hours to be able to go through and see. Um, I knew going back and looking at the past ledger that it took me 20 minutes the previous year to redact. We have youth council payments and we have uh, library card payments. It's not that big of a deal to redact, and it might take us 20, 25 minutes. So, I sent that on to the auditor and said, look, and not only that, and I want to make sure this is clear, they were told the previous year not to include minor information and citizen information into the ledger. They were told to make this as so transactionable that if any citizen were to walk in and request a ledger, that it would be handed to them. Tyler Plasto said that, and if you listen to the recording, and I'll provide that here in just a second, in the chat, the state auditor makes it clear. Now, when a state auditor, to give you context, because a lot of people ask, why does it say draft on the letter? And that's because Seth is not Tina Cannon, the state auditor. He can't write code. So every time the city cites something that is not in line, they will draft a letter and they will say, hey, based off of what we know, this is our findings of where you're at. And I want to zoom in on a very important policy because he makes it very clear what, and you need to read this code here as to what it is. So let me zoom in here. Can you all see that? Stated officers was approached. I'm not going to read the first part by both sides. Here's a letter disclaiming it. It says, we discussed privacy concerns brought up by management. So this is the city. City council members should have access to the general ledger and supporting documentation as part of their oversight for the entity. If a member of the city council chooses to share that information with a third party, like a CPA or a citizen, I want to make sure this is very clear, like an accountant, they need to be aware of any privacy concerns the city should keep track. Oh, of any privacy concerns. The city should keep track of that information in the annual data sharing report. I'm going to cite that report here in just a second. So state code says all we have to do is tell who we gave the information for. Zach Stratton wants the full ledger. Zach Stratton gets it. If Daria wants it, I can go and say, hey, Pam, I have some concerns from some citizens. I gave this ledger to Daria. And guess what, Daria? Can you go post minors information onto Facebook and go and attack a minor? No, you can't. But you are the responsible entity to treat it like that. That is state code. Why? To stop fraud. Because every citizen has a fundamental right to know where their money is being spent. Because let's say you guys, many of you guys are supporters of me. You guys lived 2 years without any supporters on your side, right? We all remember that. So let's say you lose me in an election. Does that mean now you don't get access to the ledger for information? No, it doesn't. It's a fundamental right sitting in state code. And I want to go on because it's more important. In this email, and I didn't know this at this time, the state privacy officer, Nora Kuzman, provided the city with information on privacy recording requirements via email on February 26th. I didn't read that last line, and I never spoke to Nora at that time. And that's really important to understand the gamesmanship in just a little bit. So they got that email, and it took, you'll remember that city council meeting where they were like, we don't even recognize Seth. Does he actually work for the city officer? This is marked as draft. And I'm going, yeah, that's how it works. That's state code. And I'm walking through them like, hey, this is how the code works. It says specifically out how privacy concerns are dealt with. Just a simple report that needs to go through and do that. Hey, on August, on March 21st, and this is really important. I don't know if Zach wants to speak up, but I get notified that Zach Stratton is asking, he submits in for the state to get a ledger, and Pam, our city clerk, responds back and that it will cost him $2,000 to access the ledger. How many citizens are going to pay $2,000 to find out that we're flying the world or doing whatever? Not very many, right? And state code is that he gets it for free. All we have to do is give his name, add him to the report, and he can verify finances of our city. How amazing is that? Like, how important and fundamental right, and it's citizens holding their government accountable. I went to the state auditor and showed him that $2,000. At that time, I looked at the review of the year, and I was very bothered because I knew it only took me 20, 25 minutes to be able to do this. And I'm not questioning Pam or the efficacy. I'm just, attacking her character. I'm just saying that that's not true. And and not only am I saying that, but Pam and Christy and Eric, you were told the previous year to have the ledger ready in such a way to have it prepared. This is the second year that you've made this high threshold in blocking them from being able to get into that, right? In April, I get another email on the 13th from Eric talking that illegal sharing, and this is where we start to get different citizens not understanding the code and people leaking. And I don't get mad at anyone on Facebook that's going out and being like, oh my gosh, privacy concerns, we can't share this. And I'm going to show you this. Eric knows this is false. Christy knows this is false. If I remember, I want to go back here. They were told here on a February 22nd email, and I'll get it back to you, that is not a concern. After I call the state and I say, hey, this is not, and I put it in writing. This is when I write a formal demand to comply with the state policy. We have not voted as a mayor or a council to this whole new dreamed up policy. We're going to have a CPA approve it. We're not going to give citizens to it. This is completely out of policy from the state standpoint. Seth is telling me this. I write and document everything. Some of the things that I want to point out is that I didn't know in going through this. When I disclosed the $188,000 in World Trade Center travel the year before, I thought that was a kumbaya moment where we were going to come together, come into Jesus meeting, if you will, and say, hey, we all respect each other, and Jake gets to know. And that's not what happened. It went, we're going to remove our citizen committee. We're going to get rid of the CPA. We're going to put in rules and have Eric go through this. And I want to make sure, never once, David Larray, was Sarah Cameron involved in any meetings. Marty Cifuentes was not involved in any meetings, and neither was Dave. So none of the city council members know about my treatment or what was going on in our meeting. So I want to make sure, they can't be held. I see things online, like I met with the council members, and I'm like, council members haven't been involved in one meeting over the entire 8-month fight and argument. I've gone to city council and I'm like, hey, let's apply state code. And I want to make sure you understand, I might be a minority member of our city council, but I am not sitting down to our citizens' right to this ledger. And yeah, and think about it. Do I cut a deal and say, yeah, you know what? Screw the citizens, just let me see it. I'll evaluate it if it's good or not. Or do I sit back and say, no, 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 I should get it, but I need to be fighting for their right as well? Yeah, like that. People, I just need to make sure you understand that this is a really important argument. Hey, we then, after a month of that original meeting, where we, and this is a really funny part, the city doesn't accept the letter. They go, hey, I've been given an official letter. I'm not going to even trust it. So as a delay tactic, we went from March 22nd until April 7th. So I'm being delayed for 2 months of my constitutional right to be able to oversee the ledger, and so are our citizens. In that meeting, and I made that recording public, and David was there as well. The city, again, was corrected at the beginning of the call that I could get the ledger.
Yes.
And they were told that the citizens could get the ledger. The city then spoke up and said, but there's privacy concerns in it. And I knowing going into the meeting that I could sue the city, I don't have that money, that we could take this to court. Again, why am I taking this to court? But then the city, at the end of the call, you'll hear this, that they are just saying, hey, uh, the city just wants an NDA that the auditor, I shouldn't, yeah,
It had to be a CPA. It had to be someone that you specified, and that
yep,
you also received an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, from them.
right.
They had to sign a copy of the city's non-disclosure agreement, which they provided to you, and you had to countersign it and then return it to them.
Right. And I'm sitting there going, this is not the deal. I've got state code as precedents, setting the precedents. And not only that, but we're having to find about all this spending a year after the fact. So how accountable am I making the city by just getting the ledger? So I'm not going to agree to that bad deal that state code has a higher precedence. After the meeting, a few requirements came in and are from just, hey, sign an NDA. And you can hear at the end of the call, I'm like, great, send me the NDA. I'm going to get it. We'll sign it. And I'm going to fight the right for citizens to get it. I tell them I'm going to make this public. Like the citizens have a right to know about the money. After that, it changes to the council now has to have a vote, not agree to it, because he said, I'll call the mayor. You listen to the call. He says, we'll call the mayor and the city and make sure they're okay with it. That then changes to, no, this has to be put on a council agenda. And I'm like, okay. I go to the next city council meeting. So again, we're delayed another 2 weeks. And the mayor doesn't put it on the agenda. And you can see how angry I am and I have to bring it up in a report, and I have to say, why is this not being, discussed? And they're like, an hour before, the city attorney calls me and says, oh, we didn't put it on the agenda, but don't worry, we'll bring it up in your report. So we discuss, you can see it in the meeting. I think all the council members are kind of shocked, like we're having this argument. And they all say, yeah, we have no problem with it. A couple days later, I get an email from the city attorney saying, oh, but that wasn't a publicly disclosed vote. So we're going to have to wait another 2 weeks and I call the state auditor, and I'm like, this isn't even in code that they're voting. And this is one thing I need to make sure you understand of why we're fighting for this. Could you imagine a governing, majority in the United States Senate coming together and saying, we're going to vote if we should give the minority a CPA or the ledger, right? Like that's preposterous. My authority is not limited or under the mayor. It's not limited. Marty gets access, I get access. If they don't want to ask for the ledger, they don't have to ask for the ledger. But I do get to ask for the ledger. And I'm gonna fight for the citizens' access to it, right? Finally, 2 weeks later happened, and I get that ledger, and I'm just gonna make that link positive, or I'll just post that right now so you guys can go and listen to the recording. And the thing that I want to make sure that all of you look through on that that bothers me is we have a cultural problem in our city. I am sitting in a meeting where this should be an argument. A city can make a decision on how transparent it does or does not want to be. And I understand that, right? And that argument can be the mayor says, I don't want to be transparent, and I want to be transparent. I would be okay with that. But what I'm not okay with is sitting in a meeting where our city attorney is arguing and saying we shouldn't be and taking a position there, and having our city manager go in line and say, no, we shouldn't be transparent, and this is why. And then having our finance director and then having our mayor, all of them one by one going through arguing as to why I shouldn't be getting the ledger and why a CPA shouldn't be getting it as well. And
Each
so you
bringing up
can
a new
go,
point. Each bringing up a new point about why Jake shouldn't be allowed to see it. Now, mind you, they can see it whenever they want,
right.
but why
So,
Jake shouldn't be allowed? Because they're all worried about what Jake might do with it. No one's worried about
right.
what they might do with it, but they're all worried
I
about what Jake
also
might do with it.
I also want to put into context that this made up right that they have, they are holding on to the ledger in the right code, like in a digital code that we can use. It's not in a PDF. And they're doing that because, Jake, we're afraid that you might share this with a CPA. We're afraid that you might share this with a citizen. And I'm like, you can have all the fear that you want, but you can't block me from the ledger. If I go and do that, then go put any policy against me to go through and do that. But I didn't do that last year. I'll do everything that I did the same last year. I didn't go onto social media. And I want to make sure this is important. That's a false flag. If anybody thinks that I was elected, oh, and this is really important too. Mr. Jones comes out and says, well, we should get an independent person to review the ledger. No, we shouldn't. The election of this body that I applied for on this job to represent you was that the governing body gets access to the ledger and that I would be a counter. It should not be, hey, the mayor and Eric want to have an independent person review the ledger. They don't get to choose who oversees them. The citizens do
And
on
really,
what that.
and think about it. What better review can you get than someone who might be, looking for problems, who's your political enemy? If it can pass their
Right.
scrutiny, you're clean.
And you need to have a culture that questioning things is okay, that it's not a mean thing, that citizens asking, why is a car in Disneyland? Or, hey, why am I seeing this big tab at this place? That's okay. Hey, this is all of our money. This isn't their money. This is ours, and we have a right to be able to see it. Okay. Then a bombshell broke over the weekend. I was told or we held the city council meeting. And in that city council meeting, if you remember, that our city attorney said that, Jake, I noticed that you got a paper copy of the RDA. So what you're saying is, or not the RDA, the ledger, that what you're saying is not true. And obviously, the mayor didn't allow me to speak. And what Jamie was citing was what the previous year, so in 2004, I was given the ledger for 1 year, and nobody was arguing that. I was given 1 year of the ledger after a 5 month argument. Those accusations were about being in, Ukraine and Europe and all of that. It was put in the Salt Lake Tribune, um, and found that we were spending crazy amounts of money. But to twist that as if I had been given the ledger of the years that I was requesting, it again bothered me because we had Jamie advocating in a private meeting against me getting it and then twisting things. It was very easy to show. And I simply said, show me an email where you sent me the file, Jamie. Show me the email, Eric, and I asked those detractors that are attacking my character, show me a date of an email where you gave me the ledger or any meeting because David Leray is in every single meeting. And it bothers me that I have to defend my character to go to these lengths because I have hundreds of citizens wanting to know about the spending of their money. Sorry, but it hits me a little bit differently, right? After that meeting, I was approached by and asked to review and look at that. And let me go back, that email from Seth. And he said, well, didn't you look at Nora's email? Remember, it says that what are the privacy requirements? And it says that she had sent an email for um, for the February 26th email. I go, actually, I wasn't apprised of that email. So they didn't copy me on it. And that's when I found out that our staff were actively not telling me the truth. On February 26th, Nora, who is in Seth's office, finds out about Christy's email and misrepresenting her. And they have a Zoom meeting or call, I'm not sure which because I wasn't in the meeting, where she corrects Christy and Eric, both of them. And in that email, after that conversation, Christy acknowledges that she is misrepresenting them. And she says, sorry, Nora. Below is the email chain that was created after I visited with you and Seth. And this is our finance director at the city, right? I understand that you feel my email to the mayor and council left room for interpretation. This was not my intent. My hope is to educate all of us and to place us on the same page in regards to policy and privacy. Because again, Christy is arguing that there's a privacy concern, and so therefore citizens don't get it, and the CPA doesn't get it. She says, I would love to have you review and make changes to the email below. I would be happy to pass it along to the mayor and council after you edit. So she promises to go through and make changes. She doesn't. That bothers me because I'm working for staff that are not working in good faith with me, and that I have to bring David LeRae to these meetings because you're not telling me the truth. Nora sends them a meeting. In Nora's email back to Christy, says, I haven't seen the email until now, thank you. And she clarifies, from my point of view, the primary focus on the call was regarding sharing of data related to minors. In fact, I spoke with Nora. She said, I did not know this conversation was about the ledger. And their inclusion of on the transparency website / in the ledger. We have discussed that grandma does not specifically call out minors' names and salary data as automatically protected or private, and that the only exception it provides for is if there is considered risk in the minor, and as such should be protected under a different code. We have no minor coming forward. So it's a false flag coming and saying, hey, we have. She goes on to say, regarding sharing of the general ledger or any other document that includes personal data, including personal data that may otherwise be considered public, my email did not specify that such document should not be shared. So she's totally correcting her. Just that any person sharing data has to be captured in the data sharing report per the GDPR. That's what I told you. All we have to do is say if Zach wants the ledger, we put Zach's information on the GDA report or Daria's. And Daria gets to go and refute and say, well, is the mayor hiding money in this minor? Or is that a logical library card? Or whatever. So people might feel uncomfortable that that is a public record, but that is state policy. And that is afforded to every citizen in the state so that they can hold their government accountable. The corrections to that email are very clear. So what is outlined in red and crossed out are Nora's changes. Nora goes on to correct Christy and says, you can read the first part and I'll give this to you. But for short on time, says last week we received a request. This is Christy's email, so nothing was changed. She goes, we advise against expanding our sharing of practices to include incidental and novel types of data sharing or data sharing that the law does not specify envisioning. Meaning that's creating a new report. We're not asking Christy to do a new report. We're asking her to something that's already created, the general ledger. So there's no work. It's simply download and hand over. She also, Nora goes on to delete where it says sharing our general ledger for various reasons. She went out of the way, Nora, to say, we're not even talking about the ledger on this. The law requires, and anyway, she goes through and corrects other things. One of the other things that's really important that she shares is she goes on to say that goes up against privacy concerns. The advice we got is clear. The information requested could be obtained. So she says, yeah, we do have this over on the website. When I spoke with Nora and Seth, and they knew this, that the allegation was back in November and December that our city was not disclosing millions of dollars to Utah City for work that they were doing. Again, I ran that Utah City could happen. We can't do anything with the um, density or different things. But the amount of money going was huge, and that there was a lot. The entire council was like, no, it's not that much. A lot of people, oh, you can't go through and do that. That's not true. There's millions of dollars. Next, in May, I went to go make the full email of Nora's email, and I'll be waiting for that. I'm hoping that it comes out tomorrow, of the corrections to Christy. Also in May, I get a call from Seth at the state auditor's office, and he finally says, Jake, you're right. Your whistleblower is right. The report is off by 3.5 million, with the vast majority of those payments going to Utah City. They're an individual and or Anderson, Geneva, and different developers. I don't want to name one. And I said, okay, I would like to understand the differences. He says, well, they've got some really good, they've got a lot of different excuses that and what's described to me is you guys it's like you guys doing your taxes on December 15th, and you just decided to do it a couple of weeks or a month early, and that other things came in. And after that, you went and wrote 1/5 of the entire budget after the fact, and then didn't go back and clean up the report. Could be totally plausible, right? And I'm not saying that that didn't happen. And I never made accusations towards any innuendo or those payments. I just simply said the citizens have a right to know of the millions of dollars that are supporting a project that they don't know. And I don't need to fight 5 months to find out if it's true or not. And then the last thing, I was finally given the ledger on May 13th, 2005, the day before that meeting happened. This is and Justin and all those false claims, like I was given it here, there. It's like, yeah, I was given a PDF version that you couldn't break down and see it into context. And so anyway, I just want to end with, I'm not here to argue. I've spent most of my time over the past 18 months fighting to just know what's happening and fighting for citizens to know. I very rarely fight about getting outvoted on the council. I usually fight about why do I not know about that before? And the tone of which is, if you remember right, like I was onboarded as a city council member, and they didn't even tell me that we traveled the world through World Trade Center on a $50,000 membership, right? It's just, we're not even going to tell Jake about this. And then I find out about it after the fact. So with that, now knowing it in context, does any of my accusers have any questions about what I'm fighting for or what I've tried to do?
Jake, I just want to make something clear. You've made it a couple accusations about the city traveling to Ukraine, for example, in India on city dollars, but we have no evidence that the city paid for those trips, correct?
Correct. So when I say travel, I can be very clear about that. The only way
yeah, I don't think you're being very clear right now. That's why I would like you to clarify that.
I love it that my brother corrects me because he's a good guy. When I say that, I'm not saying that we are paying for the hotel or the airfare to get there. I have asked the mayor to provide who paid her for those. What I'm saying, when we did travel to Europe, yes, the city manager and the planner all of that travel was paid for by the city. So the hotels, the gas, the trains, all of that type of stuff. The mayor's travel is a little bit different. It's half and half. She's traveling under the $50,000 membership, but her hotel and her airfare is not on the city ledgers for those travel. But for the city staff and the European travel to France and Ireland and England, that is on the, we did pay for that travel. So yeah, that's why I say traveled and, but it's good to distinguish. I would argue that because she is traveling under the name of the mayor on those trips and doing official city business, you can see the Ukraine post that she's not meeting as a citizen, she's meeting as the mayor. He's very clear, Mayor Fulmer. So you would say, why are you under the official capacity, but flying into a war-torn country where your airports are shut down? Did a vendor pay for this? Like, could you provide a, and our council could put pressure onto them, but there's no appetite to find out who did pay for it. The mayor does claim that she paid for it privately, but why would you do that if it's a city function? Or are you there as a private citizen, at which point we wouldn't be paying the 50,000 membership. And the 50,000 membership is a 3-year thing. It's actually $150,000.
Yeah, be clear, it's 50,000 per year, and they passed just the
Right.
week before you guys took office, they passed another 100,000 or 2 more years of membership.
Right. I also want to just, I am not going to bring up a lot of the other unfounded accusations, but I'm only sharing the ones that I currently believe need more. You know, I've been given quite a few of non-city employees have been driving our vehicles like spouses and different family members because of the lax thing. But it's like, I have no ability to oversee it anyway. And so when a citizen comes, it's just a little bit frustrating, right? And it takes a village of people being able to, look into it.
Jake, are you willing to share the comment that you heard? And maybe I should be texting you this, so it's not public, about the culture in the city in relation to their communications with you.
Yeah, David, multiple times when I have been into a meeting, there is, David, tell the story of them standing at the door and not allowing you into the meeting to have a witness.
Yeah, so I attended one meeting. I went with Jake to a meeting, and the city attorney, was there, standing there to say and to intercept me and say, "Well, this is a private meeting, so you really shouldn't be here, and you don't need to be." And I said, "Well, Jake has invited me, and so forth." He said, "Well, yes, but we're meeting with an advisor, and they may share some information that's sensitive, and so we want to be able to speak clearly and openly, and if a member of the public is here, we may not be able to do that. And so we would ask, we're not going to have you attend." He was nice about it.
So,
The fact is, they weren't going to let me be there.
also, during that meeting, it's important that I turned immediately over to the bonding attorneys or bonding people. This meeting was over the city council. And I said, "Are we going to be discussing the finances of the city hall today?" And they said, "Yes." I said, "Is there anything financially in terms of the payment, the dollar amount that's not going to be a public record?" And they said, "No, for our reason, there's no reason why you couldn't have him in the meeting." So I said, "Jamie, under whose authority are you removing a witness? Just having somebody there to document." And then, we leave that meeting and someone goes, "Well, Jake, that's not what they said. That's not what they said. This isn't the payment." And you go, "You guys don't even allow a witness to be in there to do it, like
No.
to document that."
And what's worse, they made me walk home.
Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful I mean, there's a lot of cultural things. Like obviously, I'm not allowed to have any citizens come into the meeting. I can't meet with any staff in the city. I can only meet with department heads unless Eric is there present. I would like to say very clearly that I am very grateful. I know this sounds strange, but I'm actually very grateful for our finance director and for our department heads. I get information through different means that they point me in the right direction as to how Eric is working and how things are happening. So I'm grateful, and I don't hold any of them accountable for what the mayor and the city manager is having them do. You have to realize they're doing what they're being told. It does bother me though, the email where our finance director and Eric know full and well, having been corrected by the state themselves and having that cited in a letter, that they're going to sit on that for a month and a half and not tell me about it and then go into a public meeting and argue against what they know is not true. They've been given an email on it. Any questions? Does anybody disagree with my fight to get citizens access to a state policy and ledger that grants you access to it? Should I be caving and just signing and saying, great, I'm the only one that gets it?
I think I speak for myself and no one else, Jake, but I think that you're up against somebody who's going to constantly twist your words. So being very specific on how and what you say is going to help you. And
That's why I wanted.
and you say a lot on Facebook. As a brother, I love you.
Yeah,
Log out for a
I
day.
know.
Hey, Jake.
Yeah,
Hey, Jake.
yeah, yeah.
To Ryan's point, I agree 100% with what Ryan just said, because I think sometimes you either get excited or you
Yeah.
but like, let's take that video for example, where you characterize them as being adamant and arguing against you to get the ledger. Things like that can just be picked apart. I didn't see it as arguing. I can understand where you're coming from, that because of the longevity of the discussion about it, the arguments that have happened. But just to add to Ryan's point, everyone's looking at
Pleading their case, right? Like,
yeah,
hey,
and
this is.
keying in on certain words, and they're going to pick it apart. Whether that's
Yeah.
actually, it's not helping their
Yeah.
case for the most part, but
Yeah.
Well, they're never going to change their mind about anything. They're looking for fodder to beat you up with, and you're walking right into it and giving it to them.
No, to be honest with you, I did not leave the meeting and expect a massive post on social media completely contradicting everything that had happened. And so, it's been 5 days of posts that are just like, hey, you're doing this, this, and this. And it was like, I have no problem going on and getting into the weeds, and in fact, sitting down with Eric and any of them. The problem is that I kept trying to meet with them and meet with them over it, and they just kept delaying on different things. So it's like, let's.
They don't want to meet with you, Jake. They don't want to solve the problem. They only want to look for more ways they can bash you. Every time you respond to them, that gives each of them a chance to respond again and bash you some more.
Right. The thing though that I would say is that I obviously have a different point of view of the amount of spending. A lot of things. I don't know if Zach wants to leave a comment or anything, but there were a few times where Zach would call and say, "Yeah, I'm on the transparency website and I'm seeing this, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing this." And it's like, these people, our council aren't bad people, and we just disagree on the amount of spending and how our taxes are 4 times the rate of Orem's, right? And so, like, what I get heated about is when they won't meet and go through things, or they won't get it, take the time to get it right. So anyway.
Well, I appreciate, Jake, your persistence on this. echoing what Sean and Ryan were saying just about Facebook, and it's hard to explain in a soundbite kind of these more nuanced issues. But the reason I didn't even the reason I wanted the ledger really comes back to the whole $35 million city hall. When the city said we can afford it, we can afford it. And so I logged onto the city website and I looked at the budgets that were up on the website, and there were some discrepancies in the budget, the working budget and the budget. And I was like, the only way that I can see if they're right, because I really wanted to believe them. I mean, everyone hopes that your city's rich. Everyone hopes that your city is just killing it, right? And
Right.
I had been approached by various people, independent of anyone approached you, and mostly people outside of our community saying, "Hey, you need to look into this, and this." So I just knew that the raw data, you just have to look at the raw data. So when I reached out for the to get the ledger, it was just as a I wanted to prove everyone wrong that was saying Vineyard's doing this, Vineyard's doing that, and it was pretty disappointing for me to get that response, and that it was going to cost thousands of dollars because um, you know um, I'm it's a download, right? And it's a control F function. I don't know, what did the state auditor say? It took him like 15-20 minutes to redact the information or
Yeah,
whatever
once
he
he
said.
got, yeah,
Yeah,
once he
once he
got
got
it.
it. Yeah. And that's my experience. I work in I run I own participate in various businesses and stuff like that, and it wasn't what they said. So anyways, yeah, thanks for the good work on that for sure. But yeah, I think that more than anything else, just I I'm still trying to figure out why the city doesn't just want to why doesn't just post it anyways, just publish it anyways. Many, from what I understand, that many cities do. They say, "Hey, just look where we're spending our money," because, like you said, it's our money. It's the taxpayer dollar. So
Yeah,
Right. And
you're spot
yeah.
on there, Zach. Like, what is there to, if there's nothing to hide, why are you hiding?
yeah, yeah, and that's
Well,
and that's what I felt like. That's what I felt like, and again, I wanted to get the ledger, and I told Christy and Eric this. I said, I just want to prove everyone wrong. That's saying that you guys are doing X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and D. But I'm like, I can't do that unless you give me the information to do that, right? So, and it's
yeah, I
so
mean, could you imagine me being in the position of like looking over the gas and I just get one lump sum, but we can't break it down by card. So we're like, okay, let's look at this employee, over how many months, how many miles, gallon did he did. And so like I can rest assured understand that this is wise use of that money because we last year we spent more money in gas than Linden City, and we don't have that doesn't include our fire and that doesn't include our police. And so it was a massive number, and it was like for 18 months I still haven't been able to refute, let's get into it, like why and how. And so I get frustrated when calls come in as an elected official of like, yeah, I'm having this battle that I can't turn it over to you, and it and so yeah, I get really, and I've known about them holding that email from Nora for the past month. And to be honest with you, Seth, there were multiple things from the state auditor, but he's like, it's the cover up that's actually worse at this point. It's like, why are you fighting the ledger? It makes it like just just don't be difficult from the beginning. When we ask for questions, get the gas card information. Let's walk through it. Let's bury it and end it. It doesn't need to be emotional, and we don't need to go to social media to fight it. So anyway, thanks for allowing me to defend me. I mean, to be honest with you. Um, and so,
I got one
like,
quick comment.
okay.
Um, I like I like transparency. I like what you're doing with that. I actually got on Facebook today because I wanted to see what happened with the referendum. And then I ran into this Ledger stuff and I was like, well, why don't I just jump on this meeting? But I've been watching you for a couple of years now, probably 2, 3 years
Right?
on Facebook. And I think sometimes you come across as defensive. And it's like what Ryan and Shane, Zach were saying. I think, I don't, that wasn't their words, but that was my words. But I would just leave off the editorial. You can respond to people with just the facts and leave the editorial off. And I think that'll
Yeah.
help you. I think it'll help you a lot.
Good feedback. No, I agree. I think I have a group of people that help take the edge off, but certain times I don't. When they're okay, I would the only thing that I would say is that when there there is a time where a city manager could step up and clear the record or correct the record when he knows they are, and it doesn't happen. There's a time when a like a finance director could, and or someone, and you know that they know, but the silence is deafening. And I'm really grateful to be able to have this situation so that citizens understand what I'm fighting, because it is a big pressure. It is emotional to me, because when I found out about Christy, the finance director's email, I'm like, dude, I've trusted you, Christy. Like, I actually thought that that happened. You'd come and tell me that you're getting pressure through that. So I would just say that it's hard to fight an organizational group that maybe they're not doing bad, but they stay in line to stay quiet. In so much that, I mean, I think it's stupid that I have to go to a meeting with David LeRae and I have to hope that there is a witness there,
It's
so that when
stupid to
we're
have to go to
arguing,
the
what that
yeah, it's just
hey, I
stupid to
feel
have to go to
stupid.
me with the I get
Yeah,
it.
that I have to bring somebody, and that I'm going to argue for my constitutional right as an elected official to have someone there to keep the record. And then once we keep the record, we have to document it in such a way. And I'm not mad at the council members like Marty and Sarah, and they will go and hear what Eric and the mayor say, but Marty has never asked me or David. I don't know about Marty's asked you, David. None of the council members have even asked me what's happened with this ledger once. But I see a social media post saying, hey, but the council members say this and that Jake's crazy. And I go, they've
Well, they
never
didn't say
been in
you
the
were
meeting.
crazy. Yeah.
Right. But there comes a point where, like, I understand they have a big spender budget, and they're bigger and they're completely different. Right. And that's totally fine. And I'm smaller and saying, hey, our taxes can go down. But what I don't like is that if someone doesn't go to the source, the council and mayor don't go to the source and don't believe it, and don't go and ask Nora, and don't go and ask Seth. I go talk to the state auditor. Like, go talk to David LeRae that this is happening. And I guess I grow tired of blanket statements like, you know, uh, Jake is lying, Jake is lying, Jake is lying, but with no facts. Because I can go and, well, what timeline and where is that? And I could walk you through it. I keep everything. I'm more than happy to go through it. What I don't like is putting false information that you don't know is true or not, because you're on the council. Like, you have to know if your staff are acting in good faith with another council member. Like, and it's been really, I mean, it's been well documented that I don't sit on any committees. So because I don't sit on any committee, many people don't know this, but unless a committee chair invites me to the meeting, like parking or education, then I never get to go to those meetings. So I've never been to an education meeting, unless it's brought to the city council, or I've never, because I'm blocked from those, right? So it's just an interesting situation to be in. And so anyway, any other questions?
Just another comment. Instead of somebody saying you're wrong or whatever, and you try to defend it, you should change it and ask them how you're wrong. And so you're not spending the time spinning your wheels.
Yeah. How am I
And
wrong? Walk me through
and
that.
and all the words you're using is like, in a way, seeking validation. And I think a lot of people have compassion for you here. Um, but at the same time, I would do that internally or try to just validate yourself internally and just be like, this is hard. And I call it self-soothing. Sometimes I think about myself like having a binky like a baby does, just because it irritates me. But babies have to learn how to self-soothe. Us as adults, we have to, it's stuff we learn and forget and learn and forget. We just have to,
Go take a diet dew. Yeah.
yep. Anyway,
So,
I just fully let it.
yeah. Thanks. All right.
I
Well,
don't do diet, do.
gotta get my diet due. No, I agree with that. Like I talked to a few people yeah, and quite honestly, it's only a couple of months until the citizens get to decide what's going on in our city. So,
Yep.
all right. Any other questions? I'll end the recording. I hopefully I answered the transparency question from Nichelle, but isn't public record right? Because of public record, is it redacted? No. Um, because it's a finance, and is the dollar amount redacted or just the info regarding the transaction? So it shouldn't be redacted. We just have to, like I said, I covered that. The state report, all they have to do is disclose and add that person to the report. And then that person is responsible if they, go after a citizen in a way. But there's not a lot. I mean, you got to realize these people that are getting pictures at the library probably don't care that they, or I mean, even if these do people care, could you imagine setting a precedence like, I disagree with developers getting payments, right? Or our lobbyists, you guys know this. Our lobbyists could just say, hey, my information is private. Keep my name off of this. Just redact it. Like there's a slippery slope, and the state has just said, with all financial matters on the ledger, the citizens have a right to know where did the money go or not. So, all right, I'll send out the recording and I'll post it. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jake. Good night.
Appreciate it. Bye.